Is there something within you that proves there's a God? Today I'm skimming a book that is consistently on the list of top 10 most recommended Christian nonfiction books, and that is Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. This book is a true classic. It was written during a time of war when men were marching to their deaths, and the author wanted to give them hope in a creator. It started as a series of BBC radio broadcasts during World War II. And of all the books written by C.S. Lewis, this one, Mere Christianity, is the one that is hailed as the most influential book he's ever written. So, what's interesting about the author is he started out as an atheist and he eventually became a Christian. So, this book is just as much for non-believers as it is for believers. And after reading this powerful case for the Christian faith, a non-believer could very well have a change of heart. So in this book, he explores the core beliefs of Christianity, the existence of God, the nature of good and evil, and how applying Christian values affects our daily lives. In this book, Lewis argues that our moral consciousness and moral judgments are proof that a moral being exists, and that moral being is God. He explores the core beliefs of Christianity, and he presents a rational case for the Christian faith. Mere Christianity has been read by millions of people worldwide, and it is considered one of the most important books of the 20th century. In this book, Lewis asks, what is the core of the Christian faith? What does it really mean to be moral? He noticed something interesting. He noticed that the things that people say when they're arguing, things like, hey, that's not fair, or come on, you promised. He noticed that, we all have a sense of what's fair and what's not, and we all believe that if you make a promise, you should keep it. He noticed that deep down we all believe there's a right and a wrong way to do things. And we all display this knowing, this universal moral law. And he questions where that law came from. He asks, did someone implant that law in us? And if there's a moral law instilled in each one of us, is there a moral lawgiver? He makes 2 points in chapter 1, which is titled The Law of Human Nature. He says that human beings all over the earth have this curious idea that they ought to behave in a certain way, and they cannot really get rid of this. And also that sometimes human beings do not behave in the way that they know they ought to. Although they know the rule of right and wrong, they know the law of nature, as he called it, they break this law. And these 2 facts are the foundation of all clear thinking about ourselves and the universe that we live in. Then in chapter 2, he brings up some arguments against what he's saying, such as, isn't what you call the moral law simply our herd instinct, which has been developed like all other instincts? And he very convincingly argues, no, it's not. He also addresses, isn't what you call the moral law just a social convention put into us by education? And he says, I fully agree that we learn the rule of decent behavior from parents, teachers, and friends and books, but some of the things we learn are mere conventions, which might have been different, and others, like mathematics, those are real truths. An example of a mere convention would be learning to drive on the right side of the road, whereas in other countries they learn to drive on the left side. So Lewis is telling us that this conscious knowing that's instilled in all of us, this knowing between right and wrong behavior, it is a clue to the meaning of life and the universe. He says, consequently, this rule of right and wrong, or law of human nature, or whatever you want to call it, and that picks up on page 20, it must somehow or other be a real thing. A thing that is really there and not made up by ourselves. And yet it is not a fact in the ordinary sense, in the same way as our actual behavior is a fact. it begins to look as if we shall have to admit that there is more than one kind of reality, that in this particular case there is something above and beyond the ordinary facts of men's behavior, and yet quite definitely real. A real law which none of us made, but which we find pressing in on us. And then in chapter 4, titled What Lies Behind the Law, the author sums up what we concluded so far, that the law of human nature, it is a real law. And it is one we did not invent, and it's one we can't forget, and it's one we know we ought to obey. And then he explores what this conclusion tells us about the universe. Quote, we want to know whether the universe simply happens to be what it is for no reason, or whether there is a power behind it that makes it what it is. So, then he concludes on page 31. It is after you have realized that there is a real moral law and a power behind the law, and that you have broken that law and put yourself wrong with that power. It is after all this, and not a moment sooner, that Christianity begins to talk to you. When you know you are sick, you will listen to the doctor. When you have realized that our position is nearly desperate, you will begin to understand what those Christians are talking about. I'm going to read a whole page is one of them. Just things that really, really, really stuck out in this book for me. And that is page 198. And then I'm going to wrap this up after I read a second passage that's a bit shorter. He says, we are all trying to let our mind and heart go their own way, centered on money or pleasure or ambition, and hoping, in spite of this, to behave honestly and chastely and humbly. And that is exactly what Christ warned us you could not do. As he said, a thistle cannot produce figs. If I am a field that contains nothing but grass seed, I cannot produce wheat. Cutting the grass may keep it short, but I shall still produce grass and no wheat. If I want to produce wheat, the change must go deeper than the surface. I must be plowed up and resown. That is why the real problem of the Christian life comes where people do not usually look for it. It comes the very moment you wake up each morning. All your wishes and hopes for the day rush at you like wild animals. And the first job each morning consists simply in shoving them all back, in listening to that other voice, and taking that other point of view, and letting that other larger, stronger, quieter life come flowing in, and so on all day. Standing back from all your natural fussing and frettings, coming in out of the wind. We can only do it for moments at first, but from those moments, the new sort of life will be spreading through our system, because now we are letting him work at the right part of us. It is the difference between paint, which is merely laid on the surface, and a dye or stain which soaks right through. We must go in for the full treatment. It is hard, but the sort of compromise we are all hankering after is even harder. In fact, it is impossible. It may be hard for an egg to turn into a bird. It would be a jolly sight harder for it to learn to fly while remaining an egg. We are like eggs at present, and you cannot go on indefinitely being just an ordinary decent egg. We must be hatched or go bad. So we either go one way or the other. And then on 65, I thought, when I read this, I thought, what a perfect way to close this whole video. It's just, well, you'll see why. I wonder whether people who ask God to interfere openly and directly in our world quite realize what it will be like when he does. When that happens, it is the end of the world. When the author walks onto the stage, the play is over. God is going to invade, all right, but what is the good of saying you are on his side then, when you see the whole natural universe melting away like a dream, and something else, something it never entered your head to conceive, comes crashing in, something so beautiful to some of us and so terrible to others that none of us will have any choice left. For this time it will be God, without disguise, something so overwhelming that it will strike either irresistible love or irresistible horror into every creature. It will be too late then to choose your side. There is no use saying you choose to lie down when it has become impossible to stand up. That will not be the time for choosing. It will be the time when we discover which side we really have chosen, whether we realize it before or not. Now today, this moment, is our chance to choose the right side. God is holding back to give us that chance, and it will not last forever. We must take it or leave it. Perfect way to end this book. So what I concluded from Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis is that he's telling us that man's ability to discern right from wrong pretty much affirms that there really is a God. And this concept of right and wrong, it is a universal concept. It is present in every race and every culture throughout the world. And we also feel an impulse to help people, even if there's nothing to gain by it. Where does that come from? So this inner compass that we carry, this impulse to do the right thing, it is the voice of God within us. That's where it comes from. And it is something that God placed inside each and every one of us. Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, I finally get why it is consistently on the list of top 10 books that a Christian should read. I hope you'll pick up a copy, or get it on Kindle. It's not an easy read. I found myself having to reread paragraphs and just let it soak in. It took a lot of time for me to get through this book, but it was definitely worth it. It's a very thought-provoking book, and I think that is what he intended, because it's a very thought-provoking topic. Is there a God? So, thanks for listening. Thanks for staying with me till the end. I appreciate all of you, and I will see you next time.